What we bring to you, Dallas Stars broadcaster, Emmy Award winner, 90s cartoon savant. It is Brien Rea. Good afternoon, sir.
And proud American for a gold medal dominant performance from our boys.
Now,
so this is what it feels like to be the king of hockey as an American. This is awesome.
Okay,
damn right.
I told you I quoted your tweet on air, and I retweeted it. I thought it was an awesome tweet because the way that team specifically was built, they said, we're going to just make sure defensively we can stop everything we can, and as you said, hold on for dear life in those hold on for dear life moments, and then maybe we can scrape together a couple goals here and there. It felt like the perfect plan and team build for this tournament.
Yeah, I think when you look at this, it's the classic you want to play to your strengths, right? And I think when you looked at the start of this tournament, nobody was going to outdo Canada in terms of forwards and offense. When you just look at the players they can put on their roster, nobody can put a forward group that is just as good as or at the same level as that Canadian roster. It's just not possible. Those players don't exist in other countries of the hockey playing world. But even going back to the Four Nations tournament last year, Canada's goaltending was always a question mark. The U.S., it was viewed as a strength. U.S. had some injuries last year. They didn't have Quinn Hughes. They didn't have Charlie McAvoy in that gold medal game of the or that final game of the Four Nations. They had them this year. And when you look at the Canada blue line, when you have those two players activated, the U.S. blue line, with those players activated, I think you look at the U.S. blue line and go, my God, that is a heck of a defensive unit to put out there in terms of impacting a game. And so as I watched the tournament start, if it was going to be Canada versus the U.S. at some point in this tournament, I always thought the matchup was going to be Canada's forwards against the U.S. blue line in goaltending. And that's absolutely what it turned into. And when you have a situation like that, nobody wants to take on water the way the U.S. did in that game. Nobody wants to be outshot 41 to 26 or whatever the final total was. And nobody wants to be stuck in their own zone, having to defend. That's not a long-term formula for winning. It's not how you're going to win a 7-game playoff series. But in a 1-game elimination gold medal scenario, I thought the U.S. was the best built team to survive a situation like that. And that is absolutely what they had to do. They had to survive a lot of different moments of that hockey game. They were the best built team in order to survive. And a classic thing is Finland that pushed Canada to the break, in the semifinal. They tried to defend their way to a win in the semifinals, and their back finally broke under the Canada pressure. The U.S. was a little bit better built to try and push back, but they were able to survive because of their blue line and their goaltending. We saw what Connor Hellebuck did. I mean, it was insane how that game played out.
Now, with all that being said, it was an amazing set of moments throughout the tournament, especially with the gold medal games. I kind of always am curious about the pros and cons coming out of it. You'd love to see a bump for the NHL, kind of, sort of like you saw after the Four Nations, though not as much as I thought. How do you weigh that in the success of the United States versus, Rantanen is hurt, Crosby is hurt. There are other injuries coming out of this tournament that impact the NHL season.
Yeah, and this, oh man, we're going to go for a while on this. In one sense, Glenn Gulletson phrased it perfectly today. He said, today as a coach, he's not happy with the Olympics because he doesn't have some really good players. But in the entire buildup to the Olympics, he was 100% for it because of how much the players wanted it, how much momentum it was generating for the sport of hockey, how impactful it was with everybody focusing on hockey, both on the men's and the women's side during the 2-week tournament at the Olympics. It's one of those, what the NHL players being at the Olympics does for the hockey conversation, hockey awareness, how much focus is put on it. it can only be a great thing for the game of hockey as a whole. Mm-hmm. Now, it's easy for me to say that because I'm not an owner who is paying these guys checks. Yep. And when they come back hurt, I completely understand an owner's perspective of if I'm forking over my money, I want all my assets, and I'm putting my assets at risk when I put them out in a tournament like this. But the bottom line is the players want the Olympics. They have always wanted the Olympics. They will continue to want the Olympics. And after the way this Olympic experience just went, both from an on-ice product and then being over there, they will continue to want the Olympics. And I think, the NHL and their owners have to understand that the marketing this does for your league, is it going to generate to millions and millions of eyeballs tuning in moving forward? Probably not. I don't know. Maybe you get a bump in your playoff chases. Maybe you get a bump in your playoff games. I did find something really fascinating. There's a hockey writer named Craig Custance, and after I believe it was the 2010 Vancouver silver medal loss to Canada, USA Hockey had received like 100,000 signups for the first time in its history or whatever. And he retweeted that after the fact, because if you think about it, 16 years ago, how old was Jack Hughes and Austin Matthews and Zach Werenski and Quinn Hughes and the Tkachuk brothers? And there's a long-term impact that's really hard to think about. And you could probably go back and look at what was the impact of 1980. What did things look like 20 years later after 1980 and U.S. hockey signups and things like that? There's a really fascinating case study for sports nerds, I think, to look at something like that. And then just the last thing for me on this whole subject, and I think this is something that as an NHL fan or as somebody who works in the NHL, this is something you kind of have to accept, the reality of life with the NHL. This is the only sport that has to play Olympic competition during their season.
True.
NBA is a winter sport, but the NBA gets the Summer Olympics. Football, primarily a winter sport, but what is it? Flag football coming up at the Summer Olympics?
Let's go.
Baseball, they have the World Baseball Classic. They can tailor that however they want to schedule-wise. I've seen some online chatter. Does baseball allow their players to go participate in the Olympics? In which case they would have to pause their season. Now it would be two, but the NHL is the only major professional sports league that has to stop its season in order to have the best players in the world compete in the Olympics. Because if ice hockey is playing at the Summer Olympics, it ain't going to look right. It's going to look goofy. It's going to get poked fun at. And this, unfortunately, this is life in the NHL. This is the way hockey is. And I think it's just something you have to accept, that this is something you have to deal with every 4 years, because this is the way your sport has been cultivated and this is the way it works in order for its existence to continue to move on. But you cannot deny the attention that gets put on hockey during the Olympics. And I hope some casual fans to say, you know what, I want to pay attention to what my local team is doing. That was a heck of Jack Hughes got like 350,000 Instagram followers since that gold medal goal. He's one of 3 NHL players now with 1 million followers on Instagram just because of that goal. How is that not a good thing for the National Hockey League and its players?
Now, I'm with you on that. I really, really am. Now, looking ahead for the Stars, I think a lot of people's primary question right now is, we know Mikko's out at least 2 weeks. It sounds like that is a very conservative estimate. What is the buzz that you've heard about how long maybe the Stars will have to be without him?
I've heard the same thing you guys have, the 2 weeks, and then they'll kind of reevaluate and see what's going on. Look, you don't want to lose your best offensive player and a top 10 scorer in any way, shape, or form. So there's no good thing that comes out of Mikko Rantanen being out of the lineup. If you're trying to find some silver lining, this is why Jim Nill has made all the moves he's made to try and build depth behind Mikko Rantanen. And I think the Stars are going to be fine. They have built a nice cushion in those top 3 spots of the Central Division. They're going to make the playoffs. Where I think you might feel this a bit is it looks more and more like we have a collision course for a first-round series with Minnesota and Dallas. And we've seen it firsthand over the last couple of years. Going to a Game 7 in a scenario like that with Minnesota and Dallas is very real. Not having Mikko Rantanen for an extended period of time, that could be enough to tip the balance where maybe Minnesota does finish with home ice advantage. And that's going to make the matchup a little bit tougher for Dallas if it's a first-round playoff series. So that's where I think you could feel the impact firsthand with Mikko Rantanen being out, and that's looking long-term down the line. In the short term, Roope Hintz is dealing with an illness right now, but he is going to be back in the lineup. 8 of the first 10 games coming out of this break for the Dallas Stars are on home ice, and they do have the bulk of these games leading up to the playoffs on home ice. So when Roope Hintz does come back, you can load up a Jason Robertson, Roope Hintz, Wyatt Johnston top line if you want to, and you can shove that down the throat of opposing teams and dictate matchups with the home games you have. So it's tough, but there are some things Glenn Gulutzan can do to try and make the most of this situation. And then always, we're 9 days away from the trade deadline. We'll see what kind of Jim Nill magic Jim Nill can pull out of the hat to try and boost this lineup any way he can. With an absence of Mikko Rantanen as well.
Do you start every one of those potential trade conversations with, hey, I need you to take 50% of the salary. Now let's talk about what we can do.
Listen, I think every GM wants to start the conversation with, I want you to eat 50% of the salary. And the other GM's going to say, great, let me see how many more draft picks you have left because you're paying me that if I'm going to eat salary. So this is going to be a really fascinating trade deadline to watch Jim Nill try to navigate. Look, I think the Stars need a forward, middle six. I think they could use another defenseman, possibly someone to play with Thomas Harley. He's kind of had a rotating cast of defensive partners. He had a tough first half of the year, but he played really well at the Olympics. And so those two needs are not easy to acquire in a regular season. How much capital does Jim Nill have to spend to try and fill two holes like that? And if you have to choose between one or the other, how do you balance that choice? So this is going to be a really interesting trade deadline for Jim Nill. But after you win 3 consecutive GM of the Year awards, I think you've earned the benefit of the doubt that you're doing everything you can to make this work. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, I'm willing to give the guy a pass if there's not some mega splash trade made because of everything he's done leading up to this point. But it's a precarious situation the Stars are in. And since you mentioned salary, we'll see if we hear anything on the Tyler Seguin front. This is around the period of time they're going to reevaluate his injury, and is it an LTIR situation for the whole salary and he's totally done for the year? Or is it a partial salary pickup on LTIR if they want to play that card because they think he could potentially return at some point in the playoffs, depending how deep the run goes? There's a lot of balls in the air for Jim Nill on this trade deadline.
Or pucks, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
Or pucks. Well done.
You got to say that right.
That's a gold medal pun right there, my friend.
Thank you very much. Bichel coming back, the excitement for this, and what do you expect there?
Yeah, first of all, it's good to get a healthy body back.
Yes.
The Stars have done a lot with, kind of piecing together their blue line. But look, he's size, he's length, little meanness, little snarl. I think the fact that he hasn't played since November 30th, he's probably looking to put somebody into the bench as quickly as possible. Just don't take yourself out of position. But there's nothing wrong with getting fresh legs back, especially on the back end. And that's a guy that is going to have to be a player for you in the playoffs. So can he make the most of his 25 games and get himself ready for a long playoff run and to take a shot at it again? I'm expecting a lot of excitement and a lot of big things out of him.
It's unfortunate that we know that you like puns, because now we can tell you some of our Olympic segment ideas. We did Bros Before Snows, Moulin Luge.
Pretty good.
The Fresh Prince of Big Air. Sled Poets Society. We had
I'm good with that.
Yeah, they just went for days and days. We had a new segment idea for every single one of them. So I'm glad to know that you like puns.
Listen, how about a shout out for Megan Keller in scoring the women's gold medal goal, the Star Spangled Dangle.
Oh,
I thought the Star Dangled banner, but I think the Star Spangled Dangle works better with the rhyming at the end there.
And I'm just saying, we had Hillary Knight on the show before the Olympics, so we did the best we could.
You did your part.
Hell
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, you did your part.
Thank you very much,
done,
Brien. Always a pleasure talking to you, sir.
Good to be back, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
There you go, Brien Rea right here on 105.3 The